In a remote Nevada desert compound, a black ex-Marine named Darius Cole finds himself staring down the barrel of a white cop's pistol. What the officer doesn't know? Darius didn't come alone. A classified Navy SEAL unit is already inside. Darius Cole, a highly decorated black ex-Marine, had returned to the United States after years of elite military service abroad. Known for his intelligence, discipline, and leadership under fire, he was respected by those who served with him and feared by enemies of the state. But when his younger brother Malik disappeared without a trace from Henderson, Nevada, a town with a growing reputation for unchecked police aggression, Darius's focus turned domestic. Malik, a college student and aspiring journalist, had been investigating a series of undocumented police raids in rural Nevada. The last location pinged from his phone was a restricted military compound 30 miles outside Henderson. Nothing. The compound in question was rumored to be a black site, a covert facility allegedly used by rogue law enforcement units to interrogate and disappear civilians, particularly men of color. The site had no official government listing, no federal jurisdiction, and no recorded warrants issued for anyone held there. Local residents stayed silent. No media ever made it past the entrance. Officer Ray Donnelly had a long record of misconduct. Complaints, including racial profiling, excessive force, and tampering with evidence, all dismissed or buried. Known for his temper and unchecked authority, he operated under the protection of a corrupt network embedded deep in Nevada's law enforcement infrastructure. Donnelly's unit had gone rogue years ago, using fear and blackmail to control information. Darius's arrival and his silent probing had triggered alarms inside that system. Darius didn't involve local authorities. Instead, he relied on classified channels through his former military connections. He activated a covert signal built into his tactical watch. Known only to former members of SEAL Team 9, an off-books unit officially disbanded, but informally reactivated in extreme emergencies. Darius was no ordinary veteran. His record gave him access to resources most Americans didn't know existed. SEAL Team 9 was comprised of operatives trained in counterterrorism, hostage rescue, and surgical infiltration. They operated in silence, in shadows, known only to a handful of top-level intelligence officers. When the distress signal went out, it wasn't interpreted as a call for help. It was seen as a declaration of war against domestic threats, masquerading as law enforcement. Meanwhile, the Department of Homeland Security had quietly flagged Henderson as a potential corruption zone. Anonymous tips, missing persons reports, and footage of off-grid arrests had accumulated over years, but internal resistance kept the investigation stalled. Darius's involvement reignited the urgency. He wasn't acting alone. He was the opening move in a larger play to expose what had long been covered up. The situation escalated when Darius entered the compound unarmed. Refusing to let fear dictate his next step, SEAL Team 9 began tracking the location in real time, preparing for rapid intervention. Tension mounted inside and outside the compound, but for Darius this was personal. A brother lost, a truth buried, and a corrupt force operating with impunity. The countdown had begun. The next move would define justice or betrayal. The unauthorized compound outside Henderson, Nevada, had long operated as a covert detention center shielded from public scrutiny. It was maintained by a network of corrupt officers and ex-military contractors who exploited its isolated location to detain individuals without legal process. Detainees were often black or Hispanic men, many of whom had disappeared after questioning. Local police conduct or attempting to report misconduct. Evidence of these illegal activities was buried, and local oversight had either failed or been compromised. As Darius Cole's signal reached SEAL Team 9, the unit mobilized with precision. Their mission was classified, and their methods left no margin for negotiation. This unit had previously operated in foreign combat zones, dismantling terrorist cells and liberating high-value targets. Now, they were being deployed inside us. Borders, a testament to the severity of the threat and the trust placed in Darius's intel. The team's objective was clear: recover Darius, neutralize any threat, and uncover evidence of systemic abuse. Simultaneously, the Department of Justice activated a quiet internal review after receiving encrypted information about the compound, its location, and the personnel involved. The contents of the transmission included footage, names, documentation confirming the illegal operations being carried out under the guise of law enforcement. The presence of federal agents near Henderson became part of a coordinated multi-agency response. However, SEAL Team 9 was already in motion and operated outside the traditional chain of command. As the compound was infiltrated, SEAL Team 9 quickly confirmed that not only was Malik Cole alive, but several other detainees were being held in severely inhumane conditions. These individuals were not listed in any state or federal database. Among them were whistleblowers, activists, and citizens previously reported missing. The discovery validated suspicions that this site was not an isolated incident, but part of a broader pattern of unlawful enforcement actions. Commanders monitoring the mission prepared a sealed briefing for senior federal officials, recommending a full-scale investigation into the practices of multiple law enforcement agencies across Nevada. The implications were explosive. The raid was no longer about Darius or Malik. It had become a national flashpoint, threatening to expose years of abuse, racial profiling, and institutional failure. The cover-up was crumbling. The truth was now in motion, impossible to contain. The exposure of the Henderson Black site triggered a wave of federal investigations, congressional inquiries, and nationwide outrage. Within 72 hours, Officer Ray Donnelly and key members of his rogue unit were arrested under federal warrants, citing unlawful detention, civil rights violations, and conspiracy to obstruct justice. The Department of Justice launched a task force focused on uncovering additional off-grid operations across multiple states, fearing that the Henderson compound was only one of several. Media coverage intensified as leaked files and testimony from the rescued detainees. It's painted a disturbing picture of systemic abuse operating beneath official oversight. Darius Cole's actions sparked widespread recognition. His identity as a decorated Marine veteran and the rescue of his brother Malik turned him into a symbol of resistance against corruption within law enforcement. National civil rights organizations elevated the case, demanding reform and protection for whistleblowers. Several lawmakers introduced emergency legislation aimed at increasing transparency, restricting law enforcement immunity in cases of abuse, mandating external audits for high-risk departments. Malik Cole's story, documented through hidden recordings and written notes recovered from his time in detention, became central to a growing movement. He detailed the tactics used to silence dissent, the unofficial chains of command that enabled rogue units, and the racial profiling used to target specific communities. His survival and testimony contributed to the suspension of dozens of officers, review of 200-plus pending cases, and the reversal of wrongful charges against former detainees. The SEAL Team 9 operation remained officially classified, but anonymous military sources confirmed the mission's authenticity. The success of the intervention reignited debate about domestic deployment of elite military units in exceptional cases of internal abuse. Though controversial, public sentiment overwhelmingly supported the use of unconventional means to expose a deeply rooted injustice. The aftermath reshaped public dialogue about police accountability, racial profiling, and the limits of unchecked authority. National protests followed, demanding permanent structural changes. Investigations expanded beyond Nevada as similar patterns were discovered in other jurisdictions. The story of Darius and Malik Cole became more than a headline. It became a call to vigilance. Share this story, talk about it, demand action. Because when silence becomes complicity, justice demands noise. If Darius hadn't acted, how many more would have vanished without a trace?